So we're just about to get started, but just for captions, if we could just go straight across so people could say their names and their organization, and then just so I have it right on the photo.
Let's start. Judy Whipple, Coffee Bar.
Mark Cadiz with Public Citizen. John Bonifaz with Free Speech for People.
Donna Kelly Williams, Mass Nurses Association, National Nurses United.
Pam Wilmot, Common Cause, Massachusetts.
Avi Green, Mass Vote.
Corey Atkins, State Representative.
Jamie Eldridge, State Senator.
Lori Ehrlich, State Representative.
Tricia Farley, VA State Representative.
Sean Garbley, State Representative.
Leon Turner, State Representative.
Jonathan Heck, State Rep.
Sonia Chandia, State Senator, 2nd District.
Eva Valentine, State League of Women Voters, Massachusetts, and President.
So we're just so delighted that so many folks are here in all of these organizations, and we're going to have a brief set of announcements, a brief conversation, if you will, about an issue that I think we all care about a lot, and that is corporate money in politics. And the question is, does corporate money have a place in politics? And I think the answer is pretty clear. What is the answer?
No.
What is the answer?
No.
That's right. The answer is no.
Salaries of the people who want to put their money in.
That's it. That is the only right place. So with that, I think you all know that we're here because of the Citizens United decision, a decision which reversed 100 years of precedent and more in American jurisprudence and law that said that politics should be for people and allowed corporations to make unlimited donations, unlimited expenditures in politics, and not only make unlimited expenditures, but unlimited anonymous expenditures. We don't even know who's saying what, and who's intimidating who, and who's trying to win and influence our elections. I'm Avi Green. I work at Mass Vote, an organization that's working to get every person in Massachusetts involved, interested in politics, and voting. And we take it pretty seriously when we've got few enough people involved in politics. We don't need anybody who's not a person involved. And it's such a turnoff for would-be voters when they know that there are commercials being put up there on TV to swamp the airwaves and bamboozle people and giving them just trash information when what we really need is a real debate. So with that, I'm going to start with a tiny bit of extremely good news. We're all here to support a very specific piece of legislation, S772, which would allow for a constitutional amendment. It would call on Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United and restore free speech for people. That bill, that resolution, lead sponsored by Senator Jamie Eldridge and co-sponsored and supported by the folks that you see here, as well as many others in this building, was today given a hearing date. So since you're all here,
Woo! Yes.
since you're all here, mark your calendars. February 28th, very soon. Yeah, we'll see you then. 1 p.m. downstairs in room A2. It's the Judiciary Committee. So we look forward to that. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Senator Eldridge, and then after that we're going to hear from Representative Atkins and the legislators. I'd ask you all to keep your remarks reasonably limited, and then we're going to hear from my partners at a variety of the advocacy groups that we all working together as a coalition with.
For helping pull this together, and I know there's so many advocacy groups and so many activists here, so I want to thank you so much for being here. And the fact that we have a hearing date is a very good sign going into this morning. I want to thank all of my colleagues, both House and Senate, for being here, as well as all the good government and advocacy organizations to push for this resolution calling on a constitutional amendment. And let me just say, as the lead Senate sponsor, and I'm proud to be here with Representative Corey Atkins, who is the House lead sponsor on Senate 772, is that understand that here at the State House, there is already a challenge each and every day going up against corporate power. I think of 3 efforts going on in the legislature right now: passing the bottle bill, real health care reform, the conversation about raising fair revenues, fair taxation. We already have a number of battles where corporate power goes up against legislators each and every day and having even just a discussion of those issues. Now, with the 2-year anniversary of the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, imagine the even greater influence by the ability for any corporation to spend general treasury funds. So we're not just talking about political action committees, but general treasury funds literally being able to spend millions of dollars in election. And we don't have to just talk about this from a theoretical point of view. We saw what happened in Iowa in the Republican presidential primary race and the impact of super PACs and general treasury funds being spent to influence the outcome of that election. So we already know the impact that can have. Imagine the impact that will have if that same kind of spending comes here to Massachusetts in this election year. And I think especially with the coming United States Senate race, with competitive legislative races, you're going to see that kind of influence here in Massachusetts. So I'm standing here to call on the legislature, call on all of my colleagues to express their support for Senate 772, come on February 28th, and let's get this resolution sending a message to our congressional delegation, our congressmen and women, our United States senators, to call for a constitutional amendment, to amend the Constitution to make it clear that the Constitution, and especially the First Amendment, are for people and not for corporations.
All right.
Now, I want to highlight just 2 more short-term action bills because there's so many great advocates here today and activists, is that there are 2 smaller bills dealing with state action that Representative Atkins and I have filed, dealing with disclosure, that even if given the Supreme Court decision, even if money is going to be spent by corporations going into this election season, let's make sure there's fair disclosure of that money, just as disclosure for anyone who contributes to any candidate for political office has to disclose it. Let's apply that same standard to corporations in terms of the election season. And also dealing with the ability for shareholders to weigh in on whether or not the corporation that they've invested stock in should be spending money in this way post Citizens United. So I want to mention that there are some short-term actions that we can take, but we're really here to call for passage of the resolution by the legislature. I am incredibly proud to be a legislator in a state that was the first with same-sex marriage, that was the first with comprehensive universal health care. Let's make Massachusetts the first in calling out the Supreme Court and pushing it back against this horrible Supreme Court decision. Thank you.
Corey Atkins and I represent the 14th Middlesex District. And one of the reasons why I love my job so much is the House Chamber is the oldest working democratic institution in the world, as is our Constitution, Massachusetts Constitution. It was the model for the U.S. Constitution, and it has been the model for every emerging democracy since. And in that, I once had to teach children from kindergarten through high school units on the Constitution. And we were talking about the concept of we the people. So I take 5 white boys who are the owners of land, symbolic owners of land, and I said, this is what they meant, is this we the people? And even kindergartners who have an innate sense of justice said, no. So we went through every amendment. And you can imagine the women here, how long it took for the women to be able to come up, the girls to come up to the head of the class. And these kids were on the edge of their seats, you know, and then it gave me an opportunity to say how we have struggled with this concept of we the people. These are the champions behind you who have devoted their lives to increasing the vote, to getting people registered, to getting them out to vote. Corporations are not people. They are not people. They're artificial entities that are made up by law so that people can do business. You know, they don't bleed, they don't reproduce, they're not even American citizens. They have no allegiance to our country. And trying to fight their resources that they don't have to report, They don't have to ask permission from their board of directors. They don't have to tell their employees who might be diametrically opposed to what they're promoting, and they can spend unlimited amounts of money. And what is the press calling this? Super PACs. Now, what does an ordinary citizen think when they hear super PAC? Just a bigger PAC? No. I want you to all go out and challenge every single media market in Massachusetts, your home paper. Are you taking any super fund money? Super PAC money. I'm not kidding. Don't laugh. Write a letter to the editor. We want to know where this money's being spent, and they should want to know if they care about democracy. Because we think that this is just going to affect people at the national level, at elections, for president. We had a chemical spill in Acton, Massachusetts back in the 70s where half Concord had to be evacuated in the middle of the night. They wouldn't let any local officials out there. Acton's wells were contaminated with part of these chemicals. Can you imagine if Citizens United versus FEC could have spent money on selectmen who appoint Board of Health officials? Right now, even though we are the people, with this decision, we have less in our armory than David did against Goliath. The power of this money and this influence, because it is so nefarious, because we don't even know where it's coming from. Just think of the title, Citizens United. Citizens United weren't people, they were corporations. They weren't even citizens. So you all have to get out there. And I wanted to do a very, very special thank you to the Concord League of Women Voters. Because when I first heard about this, I heard it on NPR. Driving on Route 2, I had my 5 minutes of outrage and then went on to other issues. Then I went to a league forum. And I was so hopping mad after that. I said, this is the most fundamentally important issue because it threatens every level of democracy, and we're not going to let them get away with it. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be very brief because there are many of us. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming to the State House. Thank you so much, advocacy organizations, all of you. This cannot happen without you, and colleagues, of course. What's under discussion here is so fundamental, yet so broad that it's very hard to get a handle on. Citizens United has a sound. It sounds so good. It's euphemistically sounds like a good thing. Then when you start to explain the details to people, sometimes their eyes glaze over a little bit. But what's really under discussion here is your voice, my voice, people's voices. And that is now under assault from the Supreme Court decision from 2 years ago. Many of us saw the danger in that Supreme Court decision. Now we see it in action. We're a living laboratory of a bad Supreme Court decision. I don't know how many of you are paying attention to the Republican primary on the national level. We've seen the battle of the super PACs that are really having an extraordinary impact on the outcome of the primary. People say, well, it's sort of entertaining. My Democratic friends say it's sort of entertaining to watch them duke it out and see all this salacious stuff come out in advertisements. But just wait. It's coming for the general election too, where this is the way elections are going to play out. And try to get yourself heard when all of this noise is being, when people are being bombarded with all of these commercials. And then the media also is the beneficiary of most of this money. So try to get them to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is wrong. Excluding the media folks. So I just want to thank you all for standing up on this important issue. It is our voices at stake here. And I also want to encourage everybody to tune in to Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, who are presenting the most extraordinary satire and sharp commentary. You won't even realize you're learning because you're going to be laughing so hard. So tune in. Last night's was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. Thank you very much.